Hello, and welcome to Turkish Films Chess. Today is episode 22. This is Daily Chess Analysis. This is the game we played earlier today. You can see that it went wonderfully. I was dominating for most of the game. I got up to plus 60, and then the final moments I blundered, and he won the game. He didn't actually win because of it being mate in 11. He won because I ran out of time. If you look at the time here, this doesn't tell you how much time you have left. This just tells you the length of the moves that were made. And you can see here towards the end, in this end game, all my moves were 0.1 seconds because I was pre-moving. And I was still trying to win, even though I didn't have enough time to try to win. So that was my error. The game was a pseudo-Catalan, which is kind of an interesting variation. He played d4, knight f6, and we go knight f3, which makes it somewhat symmetrical. And most of the time, I'm pretty much expecting them to go here to transpose into a London setup. But he played g3, which I thought was really interesting. And since he played g3, that's not like the normal London structure anymore. This bishop is still defending the pawn. But I thought, you haven't stopped me from expanding, so I'm going to expand. And this is a gambit, right? But if he takes it, I was just intending to play e6, which would attack it. And you never really want to try to defend these wing pawns too early in the opening when your king's open. It just doesn't often work out for you. So he played c3, makes a lot of sense. I played knight c6. So currently I'm playing the same way that I would play if his pawn was back here and his bishop was on f4. But after bishop g2, here I played e6. Normally, if he had played bishop f4 instead of g2 and g3, bishop g2, I'd play queen b6 here, hitting this pawn. But it's already defended, so it doesn't really help me to do that. I figured I didn't really want my bishop outside the pawn chain here. I mean, maybe it's good there, but I kind of wanted to finish up my king side and get castled, and I wasn't intending to fianchetto my bishop as well. So I played e6 with the intention of defending this pawn in case he takes it. The computer wants me to take the central pawn. But Gregory Kaidanov, which is Ben Feingold's coach, or was his coach, would always say in his thick Russian accent, he would say, maintain tension, which in English is maintain tension. And the idea is only take when it helps you, basically. If you can keep all the captures in mind, then keeping them there on the board means your opponent has to think about them even longer. And often, if they're the one releasing the tension and you get to recapture with something, you've got to move a piece forward, generally speaking, and that's good for you. But if you take, they get to move their pieces forward. So here, after taking with the knight isn't considered very good by the computer. To me, it's like, hey, you're opening up your bishop. It just says take back with the pawn. And in these positions where I have this pawn shield, I really like having my queen behind that pawn shield, so I can look at some stuff. But if I've opened up the lines, after he developed these pieces, I don't want his rook to pop over. I think I'm just being a little bit paranoid there. But also, obviously, bishop f4 is something to contend with. So he castled. And here, I made kind of an error in strategy. And in the game, I didn't have a super strong reason. I just didn't really like that his bishop got to come to such a nice square. Notice that he has, these two pieces developed, and he also just castled, which to me is like 1.5 pieces, because your king's developed and your rook's developed. So he has like 3 or 4 pieces developed, and I have just 2. So I didn't want him to gain so much in that. I should have just focused on developing and breaking his lead right away, instead of trying to prevent him from doing better for himself. Okay, he played knight bd2, totally normal, sensible move. And here I played b6, which I think was going wrong. I don't think I should have taken, but this is just an unnecessary move to make. a4, trying to expand. I was like a little bit worried about this, but bishop b7 just solves all the problems. Normally that and that is scary because your rook hangs, but here my bishop defends my rook, so I was very pleased with this. Knight b3, I thought that was a really odd square for the knight, and while I understand it's attacking the pawn, you're getting in the way of your own b pawn. So I thought that was kind of an odd move, but I just played bishop d6 anyway. He played h3, which really confused me. I thought maybe he was defending against this move, but I wasn't planning on playing knight to g4 anyway. But there's still a lot of tension here. You can see a lot of stuff can get captured here. I castled. I should have played queen c2, which not only x-rays the tension here, but increases pressure on the g3 pawn. Whoops, sorry, my arrows are going crazy. Increases pressure here. And I always have like lingering ideas of sacrifices here. Like if I can increase the pressure somehow, maybe at some point I can crash through against his king side. He's already weakened it with h3. But after he plays rook e1, right? It makes sense to me, but bishop f4 doesn't make any sense because I take it. And after he takes back, I think his king looks very open. Maybe it's fine. And at this point, I kind of caught the thread and played queen c7, which I noticed that it was supporting this after the knight moves, but also pointing out that weakness and preparing potentially playing e5 or something to break through. He played bishop e3, which, you know, further reinforces these things. And here I played c4. And I was happy with this because I had a plan in mind. And that was to get my knight to a good square. And even though it kind of sacrifices the bishop, right, because the bishop is, you know, forever sad, if I ever end up being able to play e5, which looks like it, you know, it might be possible, then my bishop can breathe life over here on that weak pawn as well. So knight bd2, pretty much forced. You don't want to put your knight there. It's so bad there. And I played rook a to e8, which loses the... Remember, I played c4 with the intention of plopping my knight here. I saw this move, and I was like, hey, that looks pretty good. But I don't really know that I just want to look at that square. I want to be able to put a piece there. And right now his knight and his queen are blocking that, so I can't go there. But after playing my move, rook a to e8, then he plays b3 and starts to break these pawns up. So c captures b3 is correct, which releases pressure on this backward c pawn. I played knight a5, which, you know, wasn't the best. I should have put more pressure first before doing this. But I was happy to have this pawn structure because I was seeing that if my bishop lands here, I'm defending all the squares. And so his pieces don't get on the b file, so I'm the only one that can control the b file, which I was pretty happy about. So I kind of know where my targets are. That's a target, that's a target. His king side's weak, so he always has to be careful about that. And when their king side's weak and they have stuff on the edge, that means my pieces are going to be good on the center or on the side. In the center, they're looking at the king side, and on the queen side, they're attacking queen side pawns. So my pieces feel very free. He played queen c1, lining up against this, I thought, maybe, but I wasn't really sure why. I saw that he could try to maybe sacrifice or something. So I was trying to figure out, should I play king h7? Is that too slow? I decided on rook c8, just saying, I'm going to make a threat. I decided that his stuff over here wasn't worth anything. Rook b1, counterattacking. So if I take this pawn, you take my bishop. Save the bishop. Also, excuse me. Excuse me. Also looking at this pawn, so the rook is frozen. Rook b3, defending the pawn. Knight e4, adding more pressure to the pawn. Bishop d2 and bishop c4. So we can see there's a huge fight over this pawn here. And I'm getting almost all my pieces attacking it. And he has to spend a lot of resources to defend it, which is really good. That's exactly what I want. And notice that this knight, in addition to attacking over here on the queen side, is also attacking on the king side. So this knight is a beautiful piece. And it can't be kicked away by a pawn because this knight's in the way. And the knight doesn't have a lot of very useful squares to go to. So in this position, he played rook b1. After all, I was attacking the rook. And I saw that I could play this move, but I wasn't really sure what it was accomplishing. The computer really loves it. And after the line that it gives, I was like, doesn't he just repeat? But I'm actually attacking this guy here. So he has to, he can't move the rook. Both the rooks were frozen for a moment. And after queen b2 attacking it, this move comes, which threatens the pawn again. Which is just nice to see that if I take it, he can't take because the rook's attacking the queen. I would be very comfortable here. I'd be worried about moves like knight e5 and then just trading all my good pieces off. But the computer just accepts it and says, yeah, you're winning a pawn. Be happy. Instead in this position, I played knight captures d2. This is a brilliant knight, like I just said. That's a terrible bishop. So trading them doesn't make a lot of sense. But my idea was that I can trade on the b file, and basically after the heavy pieces are gone, these two I thought were just, you can't suffer through these pawns. They're just too bad. And so I was okay with giving up my strong piece because it means that these pawns are just going to be stuck there and I'll be able to take them, which is what I tried to do. And here I had a lot of imprecision in the way that I went about this. Like that was just a free pawn that was hanging that I missed. Here I found the pawn. Bishop a6 doesn't make any sense. The idea is that it stops the queen from going to this square, which I was happy that I saw was one of his threats, but it's just too slow. There's just no need. I can just, if he goes here, then I would take his knight with check. So it's not that big of a deal. And here I really messed up. And right after I played the move that I played, which was queen to c4, immediately after I calculated this. When his bishop was here, I knew that it was defending. And so I had actually thought his bishop can't go here because I check and then win pawns and everything's bad for him. But then when he actually came down to playing it, I had very little time at this point, and I brought my queen back. To go through the line, it's all forcing. Here, you got to block. Here, this bishop is not only check, but it reinforces the battery against the knight. And this is a check that must trade queens. And this pawn's falling. Everything's falling. It's super winning. I had very little time on my clock. So queen c4, queen c2. And now I made the move, which I was pretty happy with myself. And I win the knight. Okay, bring the queen back. My queen didn't have very many moves. So I played this in order to bring my queen back in the game. He played bishop g2. I brought my queen back where I wanted it. He defended his pawn. And I just started making moves. I think I had like 30 seconds or something. Like it was actually not a lot of time at all at this point. And he had much more time than me. And so I was becoming very worried. So I just tried to make very safe moves. I brought my queen back, saying, let's trade bishops. He obliged, which was very kind of him. I attacked both pawns again. So he's got to find a way to defend both. He chose queen b3, h5. So we're just making normal moves now. I put my bishop on what I thought to be a more active square. Let's trade queens. He said, okay. It was odd that he traded queens here, but I was pretty sure that I was winning in this position. But again, I'm just pre-moving. So I got to make sure I don't mess up too poorly. That's a very clear weakness, so I go after it. Okay, I force him to leave the pawn. And then I go here. And now all the pawns are stopped. And I'll just go through and take them. But I repeated a bunch of times. I don't know why. I was just trying to get a draw, but there's no draw. And I had far less time than he did. And this is very unfortunate. I'd pre-moved this move after I moved my king, assuming that he was just going to keep doing this. But right when I moved my king, I blocked the bishop, and so he moved the pawn. I played bishop d6 as if the pawn was still here, and so he makes a queen. If I can play this move, okay, it doesn't really matter what he plays, but here, that's kind of unnecessary, actually. I'll just go down, take this pawn, come back up, take this pawn, and then I win, it'll be a draw because I have insufficient material. Yeah, so that was kind of a rough one. We did well, I'd say overall. We played 81.7%. We blundered at the end. We kind of lost our way a couple times here in the middle game phase. But I think overall it was a good display. And I'm glad that my opponent was able to win the game and was to make smart pre-moves at the end. Thank you so much for watching Daily Chess Analysis, episode 22. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you stay Turkish.